So it's a great pleasure to be speaking here on behalf of INSITU to present our view, to present our approach to projects, and to tell you how we finalize projects under difficult conditions. I would like to present to you 4 case studies for different projects. Differences here lie in size, in scope, in cost. But first of all, I'd like to tell you who we are, where we are based. So we have 4 subsidiaries, or we are based in Basel, Zürich, Liestal and Rheinfelden, 4 different locations. And this is where our name comes from, INSITU. INSITU meaning on-site. We always try to work with the project managers on-site in order to guarantee short response times and to solve problems right on-site and define them there. And once the projects have been completed, finalized, we go back to Zurich or back to Basel. You see here the great number of people working for us, between 5 and 26. They all are specialists in the reuse of existing areas and unused areas. We also have an extensive network of freelancers who work for us, who develop projects and who look for investors. And after this development phase and this investment phase, we take over the projects if this is possible for us, and otherwise we award them to other companies. So such projects are Denkstadt, then the old New Market Hall in Basel, then Bauteil Börse, the component exchange. For those of you who don't know that, it's a platform, a forum that is looking for materials, makes them new again and sells it on. Then Verein Unterdessen and Raum auf Zeit. These are 2 organizations that use locations and spaces for a certain time. And let me start with Gundeli, a project in Basel. You can see the size of this project. So this project was initiated by Pascal Biedermann, Erich Honecker, Irene Witte, Marta Schenker in the year 2000, after it became public that Sulze Burkhalter, a company, a traditional company there, would close its doors and open the doors for the people living there. So you must imagine there was research done there previously, and for the inhabitants of this neighborhood it was impossible, or had been impossible, to enter this area. And once it became known that they would leave, the people living around there became active and tried to take ownership of the project and to open up this location for the neighborhood. And within the shortest of time they had attracted investors to finance the project over the following 15 years. And what is very good about this project is that you see something that was called a palimpsest in ancient times. So that you scribble on leather, write on leather, scratch leather, and if you go into the location you can see how this area reflects the history of this centennial industry and actively revives it. And over the past 15 years, 70 tenants have settled in this place, and on 12,700 square meters they are now living and working, and a new meeting point for the neighborhood has evolved. And in the beginning it was a deliberate decision to continue the heritage of this industrial location and to live the relevance and sustainability of this location, and the tenants were chosen to make sure that there is a good mix of people, families, there's a children's circus, there is an organic bistro there, so something new and special for Basel. So this is a view of the organic bistro, and what's interesting about this picture is this cultural heritage perspective. We don't have money to do anything, but what we do, and if we do something, we try to make the best out of everything, and so we take over spaces as they are, use what exists already, and we always try to give new life to things that exist. And the same holds true for the tenants in high spaces, in big spaces, small spaces. You look for suitable tenants to settle there. This means in the area of the Sulzer Burkhalter locations, they now have a backpacker hostel where previously the workers were able to take their showers. And then in the high spaces, there is now a climbing location, and so the right investments were made to guarantee a suitable use. And the entire project is a project trying to achieve a 2000 watt society. So the planning was done based on what was already there, and now we have a pioneering project for the 2000 watt society. And every year about 200,000 Swiss francs are invested in sustainable retrofits. And the second project is a little smaller. It's in Zürich, where we have our office. So this is an area which until 2027 we can work on. And so we have decided to put containers there. In the beginning, the base camp, as it would translate into English, this base camp was in another area in Zurich, was then shifted there within a period of 6 weeks. Our neighbors are the Asylum Camp Association, then Transit an association, and then the Prostitutes Meeting Point, a very special project in Zurich. We, as a small office or agency, were allowed to develop this area, and the tenants, especially the creative tenants, now have a place to meet. Here you see the different tenants of the base camp. So you see it on top, creative organizations, then the asylum camps, then transit, and the prostitutes working place. So who is that? Who wants to have such people as tenants? Who is brave and courageous enough to invest here? And 10 years ago, Swiss Life, an insurance company, said, okay, we need to create a space for creatives. And so for 120,000 Swiss francs, they invested in containers, which were put there. And so the project came to life. But given that these creatives and creative organizations are not able to pay normal rents, we first had to try to work with what was given, what was there. So we tried to use everything that was there for our planning. So this means greenfield areas, developed areas, buildings. So we wanted to keep everything in order to keep investment costs low. And so this area was a good thing for us when we moved from Binz, the previous area, to Altstetten in Zurich. So it looked like that. These containers were brought to the new location in Altstetten by truck and put onto simple foundations. And the base camp has now been standing there for 4 years, will remain there up until 2027, providing a home to about 27 officers for creative people, which all form a kind of ecosystem and they benefit from each other. So we have photographers there, graphic artists, everyone right on site, and so we are trying to further develop this ecosystem, this universe, depending on the individual users and users. Here you see the different modules that we created from ship containers, modified ship containers, vessel containers, and we then hand them over to the future tenants, and the different pictures show you how simple the conditions are under which the future tenants receive these containers, and they then can further develop the interior space in order to save costs. And once the tenants move out of their container, they can leave everything to their successors if they want, and they can bilaterally agree if they want to sell something or they leave it there for free. And so these different containers all have a different use and character. And on this area, we also wanted to attract SMEs and craftspeople. So we have a closet maker here, we have musicians here, who all have their bases in the base camp, so to speak, and have a good environment for their first steps as startup companies. Another project that we run here is the asylum camp organization. We put up the containers for them there. So this asylum camp organization learned about our project, and they also wanted to have a container settlement then. And you can also see here how simple everything is that we build, and that we leave it to the users how to use the spaces. And this is a new kind of seeing architects' work and living the architect's life, because we say we do not think through the whole project. We keep certain areas open so that the user can kind of put his own mark onto this. You may know bricolage, this term, this building something from existing resources, building new structures from that in order to create something new. And with this on the top of our mind, we left this area as it was so that the future tenants could create something new.
This can also be seen in this restaurant Transit. It initially was a garage, which we were luckily able to leave in place. It's a very Swiss thing to break everything down, but thanks to a administrative trick, we were able to leave it as it was, and it became a meeting point, a local meeting point where 120 different offices around the area can go for food and have an exchange with refugees who live there or work there. In that case as well, we defined the outside layer, and afterwards we let the future tenants decide on what they wanted to do. And we trusted them that they were able to create the inside in the right way that would be suitable for them. It's obviously something that's difficult for an architect because he likes to have a finished planning. But our attitude or our plans are different. We leave open fields and decide not to define everything beforehand, except for water, electricity, heat, and so on. And the fact to leave the space open and available is something that's difficult, even while planning and while getting the approval on the administrative side. How do you explain the space that's not been attributed to a purpose? Another project that we concluded last year at the Grubenstrasse in Zürich. It's a project that offers space for 40 different workshops on one site, with an intermediate use as well. It was they wanted initial plan for living spaces on in that same area, but in the end the city of Zurich realized that they needed more space for the workshops and decided to not provide for dwelling places. The directors then decided that they wanted to occupy this space over the next 25 years, and thus they gave us the order to create or find a way in which this place could be made more dense and offer maximum space for workshops. That was the initial situation. We tried to respect the existing structure of that area as much as possible, and through densifying of the building and resourcing different resources and sustainable material to create a project that wasn't very costly. That was the beginning situation. Then we created a second floor that's created out of wood with a module building, and while we tore down some of the parts, we were already wondering about which material we could recycle into the new building. On the one hand, we were able to use the roof, which was then used on the outside facade, and then there were also different steel girders, which we were able to use then. And then there were different sort of woods which we then used to create benches on the outside. You can see the steel girders, which are defined through their function. And here is a picture of what the outside looks, how the roof became the outside of the wall. Here's something different that we used from another place that we had to tear down, but we were able to use the post boxes again. And while I talk about that, I remember the abizabi, this Japanese term that describes the perception of beauty. And on the one hand, it's a question of material. A material that can be lost in the surroundings, but when it's put into a whole presentation, it's quite beautiful. We also decided in that case as well to leave the project at a provisional state and allow the users themselves to create their spaces on the inside. And you can see different pictures here of how the users have used their space. In this case, clothes, graphic, design. We trusted them to be able to inhabit the space that was allocated to them. In the sense that each room in the end ended up with its own character. Here's a picture of the kind of module that we deliver. It's simple, it's stable, something that they carry on their character, and which expresses the future expresses the trust that we have towards the future user. And here's the view from the outside with the added floor, 5 floors modular building in wood, and now you see the outside wall, which used to be the roof, and which has also its own beauty, its characteristics that are featured here. Another project, a small project, small but very fine, something that we also did in Zürich. It's called the Little Freedom, Kleine Freiheit. And thanks to the projects with which we were working, we got to be quite renowned for the fact that we were able to do a lot of projects with little money. And 2 students came to see us, said that they had a container and wanted to turn it into a coffee shop. They didn't have money, but they had a good idea. And then we thought, well, why not start out from there, from that background? So they tried to find a site in Zurich where a coffee shop would be a good, which would be a good spot for a coffee shop. And when you go up by tram on this way, and on that spot which wasn't a proper spot, it was a non-spot really, and that's what they chose, and they said that's where we want to have a coffee shop. And since they didn't have any money, we had to find a meeting point where we could invest, support them, and where we could also let them deal with their own situation and let them become an actor. And that's the presentation, the final presentation after a lot of work. And what was interesting within that project was the fact that in the beginning they only had a container. 6 months later we were able to do the wooden cover on the outside, and then 6 months later we used material from different sites which were torn down. We continued. This is wood that comes from a different project where we tore down part of the construction, and it was used in there. The windows came from the city of Zurich, different places, and we used the tear down piracies, what we called. It's a network that we actually built, and where we put in what we have, where people can come and take what they need and use it on their site. And that's a term which we heard this morning, spolia. It's the theft or the tearing down of material, and it means that we have a very short time to react in order to make this project flies in their own wings. And we have to react very quickly in order to help them see the actual day. It doesn't bring us a lot of money, but we consider that this is a social responsibility as well. It's very important within the public space to have that sort of project. Then the creed that we have worked with is around the components, the building blocks. How do we work with our project? What's important when we try to bring in a lot of heart and create as little cost as possible? And these components are defined through experience. It's something that can be exchanged depending on time and circumstances. This term Baustein, component, it's a basic attitude, and this attitude is defined by the fact that when we work in a project, we try to gather these, and once it works, we start realizing the project as such. And for us, when we try to bring in plants or bring in greeneries, we say it's something that's sustainable, it's something that allows for traffic, something that is important. We always try to plant as many plants as possible on our projects, on the outside, on the roofs, in order to give an identity and a character to the places that we create, and give roots to what we do. And it's been a positive experience so far. It's got to do with new limits as well. Secondly, the question of traffic or transit. We try to always define our project with as little space for traffic as possible. So not many parking lots, for instance, so that attracts different kind of renters. But on the other hand, we always provide for space for bikes, and it's something that's important. Secondly, we use the synergies that are possible. We try to bring them together, bring different people together in the same spot. How do we do that? We try to create spaces that are in common, like recess rooms or toilets or whatever. The space that we are in today shows it beautifully, how on a very small space you can feel this diversity and how it creates an atmosphere. It's important to allow for a daily use and a nightly use. During the day, it could, why not, be childcare. In the evening, it could be a theater. So they pay less rent and are able to work within their limits in their projects. And obviously, the idea to inspire one another. For instance, if you have a writer and that talks to a designer or an architect, it's probably a good place for new ideas, and most of the time they're free. And then the reuse or the redesigning of use, that's something that's really important when we start out from what exists. We don't want to create too much expectation when we work with people. An office is an office. A changing room can be used as it is for a dancing space, for example, for a theater, for whatever. But we try to work with what exists and bring in a use that doesn't require too much investment. In this example, it's the lift, the structure. The structure allowed for a lift, so we were able to save this space. And something that's very un-Swiss is we're going against perfection. Where do we stop planning? How do we work with the non-perfect facts? How can we use the surroundings and the context? How can we satisfy ourselves with what we have and wait and see, feel the atmosphere and work with it? And out of that, stories are written, and that's something that the site tells itself afterwards. It gives a new identity to the spots. And that's also a way to save in terms of cost. We say that we're saving roughly 30% because the existing projects, the new use of those projects allows for roughly 30% of savings. It's so we use like 30% of what's used instead of building it anew. And finally, leaving options open in order to build only what's necessary and to not miss out on the point where we do too much, plan too much and stop something. And in these spaces, it's extremely important to be in contact with the future user, renter, owner, and try and define how much of the responsibility can be left and be abundant, or how far we need to go. Thank you very much.